Millionaire: Secrets to Success in America. The crowd buzzed like electricity in the grand ballroom of the St. Regent Hotel. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting flickering light over faces drenched in excitement. Flashbulbs exploded every second, cameras hungry to capture the union of Jonathan Reid, the blind millionaire who had clawed his way from silence to fortune, and Emily Harper, his childhood sweetheart. The story was everywhere. Tabloids, news channels, social feeds. This wedding had become the event that no one dared to miss. Jonathan stood tall at the altar, his cane resting quietly beside him. His heart pounded against his ribs like a warning drum. Around him, voices whispered in reverence and envy. His smile was steady, but inside, a tight knot twisted. Emily was radiant in white, her fingers trembling slightly as she reached for his hand. To everyone watching, the scene was perfect. Too perfect. Then came the crack in the mirror. A sudden hush swept over the room when a shadow moved at the edge of the crowd. Marcus Reid stepped forward. Jonathan's twin, a man long thought erased from the family story. A cold, dangerous chill blew through the air as Marcus's eyes locked onto Jonathan's blind gaze. "I'm sorry to crash this," Marcus's voice cut sharp like a knife. "But there are truths Jonathan's been kept in the dark about. Family secrets, lies woven into everything you think you know." Gasps exploded. Muffled whispers snagged on shocked lips. Heads whipped like startled animals as cameras zoomed in on the tension clawing the atmosphere. Jonathan blinked, heart sinking. His mind reeled through years of questions, betrayals, and forgotten memories. This brother, the brother he'd tried to forget, was back to dismantle the life he'd built. Fingers clenched into fists, his chest felt squeezed tight, every breath shallow and jagged. Emily's eyes darted between the two men, confusion and fear swirling fast. Something, an unspoken bond maybe, twisted inside her. Loyalty tangled with curiosity, support wrenched by doubt. "Why now?" Jonathan's voice cracked, raw with hurt. "Why after all these years?" Marcus smiled, a cold, bitter curl of lips. "Because the truth won't stay buried forever. You never deserved to be the only one standing here today, not without knowing everything." The wedding guests sat frozen in disbelief. The ceremony splintered into shards of shock and disbelief. Some whispered frantically, "What does he mean? What secrets? Is this some kind of scam?" The air pressed thick and suffocating. Jonathan's world rocked violently. Not just because of Marcus's accusations, but because beneath the surface, old wounds flared. Pain, betrayal, jealousy, raw and throbbing. The foundation of trust under his life, his love, was crumbling fast. Emily's breath hitched. Her heart hammered erratically, caught in a storm of emotions she hadn't signed up for. Her loyalty screamed for Jonathan, yet a strange pull toward Marcus's story gnawed at her. Was she seeing the cruel side of their past, or the truth? Marcus stepped closer, lowering his voice to a fierce whisper that only the two brothers could hear. "There's more, Jonathan. A betrayal deeper than you can imagine. One that changes everything." Silence swallowed the room. The air snapped taut. Time itself seemed to hold its breath. Jonathan's hands trembled. Emily's eyes glistened with unshed tears. What was Marcus hiding? And how would this dangerous secret rewrite their lives? Hey, before you continue with this incredible story, I have an important warning for you. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube has removed their subscriptions without warning. Take a quick look at the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I don't want you to miss any exclusive content. And while you're there, leave that powerful like. It helps me a lot with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, what city are you watching from? I love meeting all the amazing people who are part of this community. Your participation makes a difference. Let's interact. Marcus's words hung heavily in the air, each syllable pulsing with an unthinkable gravity. Jonathan's heart raced, each beat echoing in his ears. The momentum of that moment pushed against him, thick and suffocating. While the crowd wrestled with disbelief, Emily's grit tightened around Jonathan's fingers, but a flicker of fear danced in her eyes. Betrayal? Jonathan's voice trembled, a rasp breaking through the crisp silence. What kind of betrayal? Marcus leaned in, his breath breathy and conspiratorial. You think you're the only one who suffered? You don't know the half of it. Not even close. Before Jonathan could respond, a loud crash reverberated through the ballroom. A massive chandelier above them shattered, raining down sparkling shards of glass like deadly diamonds. Screams pierced the charged atmosphere. Chaos erupted as people ducked for cover, some clutching at their heads, others stumbling backward into chairs. Jonathan barely moved, eyes wide with disbelief. He felt the heat of panic rising around him, a tempest swirling in the space where everyone had once celebrated love and unity. Outside the chaos, he could sense Emily's movement, her presence a flicker of warmth against the cold, harsh reality that had suddenly descended. "Emily, get down!" he yelled, instinct propelling him to shield her. But in his mind, he was pulled between the shattering glass and Marcus's chilling revelations. They were meant to celebrate, to vow an unbreakable bond. Instead, the very structure of their dreams seemed to collapse. Crouching low, Jonathan felt the vibration. "This can't be happening," he whispered to himself, disbelief anchoring his feet to the floor. Questions spun in his mind, but one cut through the din clearer than the others. Why now? Why disrupt their happiness with chaos? Once the room quieted, Jonathan's hands shook. The aftermath revealed the chaos, a few scattered chunks of glass, guests crying, some sitting frozen on the floor. He searched for Marcus, who stood eerily still, a twisted smile playing on his lips. "Thought that would get your attention?" Marcus taunted. "People can only hide from the truth for so long." "Why are you doing this?" Jonathan's voice cracked under the weight of confusion and fear, eyes narrowing on his brother. In that moment, the blind man could feel Marcus's dark energy permeating the space, a storm ready to unleash. because you need to understand. It's not just family secrets. It's about who you really are and who I thought I knew. Then an unexpected raw truth slipped from Marcus's lips. You were never supposed to be the favorite. You were never the one. With those words, Jonathan felt as though the ground beneath him had erupted, tearing apart his identity. Emily's brow furrowed in fear. What do you mean? Jonathan is... But Marthis cut her off. What the world sees, the blind hero who succeeded against all odds, was crafted with lies. Did you think he was special? You have no idea what he really is. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd, remnants of the broken chandelier glossing over shocked faces. Eyes darted between Jonathan and Marcus, each person mentally peeling back the layers of reality, trying to reconcile what they thought they knew. Jonathan's pulse raced. Fear clawed at him. What more could Marcus reveal? The whispers of doubt took a firm hold, every heartbeat amplifying the split in his world. As he stood at the edge of that troubled line, he felt Emily's presence slip like sand through his fingers. "Emily, please," he begged, but the look in her eyes had transformed from loyalty to bewilderment. He could feel it, all the trust unspooling between them, like thread unraveling from a seam. Then, a deep, rumbling sound echoed, one that twisted their world even further. Not just the chandelier's remnants, but an announcement ringing loud and clear through the hall. Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt this event with breaking news. Jonathan Reid is not who you think he is. Stunned silence swallowed the room. Jonathan's breath caught as he raced against the dual tides of revelation and denial. Everything was shifting beneath his feet. But as he stood there, trembling and exposed, one question lingered, pulsing in the stillness. What? Jonathan stood frozen in the wake of Marcus's revelation. The audience was a sea of shocked faces, each person wrestling with the storm of uncertainty swirling around them. And in that moment, the air was electric, charged with the weight of hidden truths and mismatched identities. The announcer's voice echoed again, slicing through the confusion. Not who you think he is. Those words hung heavily, resonating in the silence. Jonathan's heart raced. What did that even mean? He felt Emily tighten her grip on his hand, her eyes wide, reflecting a mixture of fear and curiosity. "Jonathan," she whispered, her voice barely audible, yet laced with urgency. Before he could respond, a blaring alarm pierced the air. A series of red strobe lights cut through the dim atmosphere, intensifying the chaos. Attention! Emergency evacuation! A voice blared over the speakers, but Jonathan was lost in the storm inside his own mind. Marcus smirked, leaning in closer, his words seeping with malice. "What a perfect way to make an exit, don't you think? But don't worry, Jonathan. I'll make sure you find out the truth soon enough." He turned away, his silhouette cutting a path through the crowd. But in that moment, something crashed again. A loud thud echoed from near the entrance. The doors flew open, and a figure stumbled in, face pale and breathless. "Stop him! He can't get away! Confusion morphed to chaos as tension surged. People gasped, and a palpable fear gripped the room. The newcomer was a woman, wild-eyed and frantic. Jonathan tried to catch a glimpse past the crowd. Something about her sent a ripple of recognition through him. "Who are you?" Jonathan shouted as the crowd parted, revealing her more clearly. "Your mother," she panted, clutching her side. The words tumbled out like boulders, heavy and sudden. "You have to listen. There's something you don't know." Gasps echoed, and Jonathan's world spiraled. His mother? But she had vanished when he was just a child. No! That can't be true. Emily's fingers slipped from his grasp as she stepped back, shocked. The distance stung, an invisible wall rising between them. The woman continued, her voice trembling. "The accident. It wasn't what they told you. The truth about your family. It's all a lie. I'm here to expose it all." The room quaked with whispered disbelief. Jonathan felt the icy fingers of dread wrapping tightly around his heart. He remembered vague memories, snatches of laughter, the warmth of someone who loved him without conditions. But this was worse than he ever anticipated. With a sudden surge of panic, Marcus reappeared, practically pushing through the throng. "You should have stayed away, Mom," he hissed, eyes flashing with pain and anger. The crowd recoiled. Jonathan's pulse thudded in his ears, drowning out everything except this horrific family drama unfolding before him. "You're both lying. This can't be real," he shouted. "Look around you," she screamed, desperation in her voice. "You're in danger. They're coming for you, Jonathan. The truth needs to come out before it's too late." Time froze again, shock and fear mingling in the air. Lurching forward, Jonathan tried to comprehend. You've so many lies. Where did he fit? Who was he really? His identity felt like sand slipping through his fingers. With that, the lights flickered, casting shadows across the ballroom. Heavy footsteps thudded outside, a sound that sent shivers down Jonathan's spine. The crowd strained toward the entrance as murmurs of dread rippled through them. Then, just as quickly, the doors flew wide open. The masked faces of men in dark suits stormed in, eyes scanning the room with predatory intensity. Jonathan's world shattered further. What do they want? He thought wildly. As they circled closer, he felt the room closing in. What did it mean to lose everything? Did he even know who he was anymore? The danger was real, and time was slipping away. The tension snapped like a taut string as masked men swept through the ballroom, a shadow of menace trailing behind them. Jonathan stood frozen, heart racing, confusion and fear swirling in his gut. The woman who claimed to be his mother had shattered everything he thought he knew, and now the arrival of these men threatened to do the same. "Get down!" someone shouted, and the crowd surged backward, frantic chaos erupting as bodies collided. Jonathan searched for Emily, desperate to find her. Was she safe? Panic gnawed at him, tightening his chest as one of the masked figures moved toward the dais where he stood. "Jonathan Reid," one of them shouted, voice deep and commanding. "You need to come with us. It's not safe here." "What do you want?" Jonathan's voice trembled, but he stood firm, unwilling to budge. Who were these men? What did they know? As the crowd bathed in confusion, Marcus stepped forward, eyes glittering with a mix of rage and satisfaction. "You don't understand, Jonathan. You're not just a millionaire. You're a target." "For what?" Jonathan demanded, feeling the heat rise in his cheeks. "Who am I really?" But then, there it was, a flicker of something in one of the masked men. A momentary lapse, and suddenly the mask slipped down, revealing a face Jonathan recognized. His breath caught in his throat, heart pounding like a war drum. "No, it can't be you." The man, once a familiar face from his childhood, a friend turned foe, grinned coldly. "Surprised to see me, Jonathan? You should be. You're the last piece of the puzzle we need." The realization hit Jonathan like a punch to the gut. This man had been part of his life, tucked away in memories, only to return in this moment of chaos. But just as confusion swirled, he caught the sound of a scream, an anguished cry slicing through the turmoil. A voice he recognized all too well. "Jonathan, no!" Emily's voice rang out, piercing through the noise. Panic laced her tone, and Jonathan's heart sank. Before he could react, a sudden explosion echoed from the decorated entrance, shattering the remaining calm. A fireball surged through the doorway, the sound echoing like thunder, and the heat washing over them. Chaos erupted again. Screams mingled with the acrid scent of smoke. Jonathan's instinct kicked in as he sought out Emily in the chaos. For her, he would fight through fire and ruin. He pushed through the throng of panicked guests, their faces painted with terror, and emerged at the edge of the battlefield like a soldier storming into war. "Emily, where are you?" he called, desperation coloring his voice as he scanned the room. She emerged from the crowd, face pale and eyes wide, but a man grabbed her by the arm, pulling her back, squeezing hard. "Leave her alone!" Jonathan shouted, feeling the fury swell inside him. Then Marcus stepped between them, dark eyes gleaming. "You see, Jonathan? This is the kind of world you were born into. A world that will do anything to keep its secrets close." "Secrets? What do you know?" Jonathan's voice was raw, but with every word, he felt the weight of something monumental collapsing around him. And then, with a flick of his wrist, Marcus tossed something at Jonathan, a small object that glinted ominously as it flew through the air. Jonathan instinctively caught it, recognizing it immediately. A locket. His mother's locket. The one from his childhood. "Your mother was a player in this game long before you were," Marcus said, glee dancing in his voice. "But here's the real twist. She never wanted you to have it." The words struck Jonathan like a thunderclap. "What do you mean?" he gasped, heart racing. "Because she's not the only one who kept the truth from you. And if you want to survive tonight, you need to uncover what she's been hiding from you all along." Suddenly, the interest of the masked men shifted, their attention drawn to the locket, as if it were a spark in the dark. The fire, chaos, and Emily's grip slipped away as suddenly. Jonathan felt the pull of fate staring him in the face. Everything he thought he understood about his life flickered, in and out of focus, every childhood memory flipping until it was just a blur. Who was he if not the man shaped by family secrets? And if this locket held the key, what other truths were ready to shatter his world? With Marcus's words echoing in his ears, Jonathan felt the floor shift under him, the ground crumbling into an abyss of uncertainty. Just how deep did this rabbit hole go? And would he ever find the light at the end? Jonathan. The masked men were closing in, their intentions menacing, and Marcus seemed to thrive on the fear that electrified the room. But why? What do you all want? Jonathan's voice strained against the cacophony, searching for answers, for clarity amidst the gathering storm. Jonathan! Emily's cry broke through the chaos, clear and frantic. He turned to find her, eyes wide with terror, struggling against the grip of a man whose intentions felt as brutal as the chaos that surrounded them. Jonathan pushed past the frightened crowd, desperate to reach her. "Let her go!" he shouted, feeling the weight of fear settle heavy in his chest as he moved. Time stretched like taffy. He could feel every heartbeat, every breath suspended in fragile uncertainty. Marcus stepped closer, a serpentine smile creeping across his face. "You're too late. You don't know the truth about her either, or about what she's done." Jonathan's stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" The sound of boots thudding echoed like a war cry as more masked figures poured into the ballroom, effectively trapping Jonathan, Emily, and Marcus as whispers of panic rose from the crowd. "What are you talking about? Emily is innocent!" Suddenly, the woman who claimed to be his mother shouted from the far edge of the throng, voice rising above the din. "Jonathan, you have to listen!" The very air crackled with tension as all eyes shifted to her, her expression wild, desperate. "Get away from him!" Marcus yelled, the fury in his voice cutting through the noise like a jagged knife. But Jonathan was transfixed. Everything around him blurred as he processed the chaotic scene, anxiety coiling tight within him. "Tell me the truth!" And then, a sudden rush of air filled the room as another figure barged through the entrance, an agent of truth, or perhaps destruction. "Stop!" the figure yelled, revealing herself as a woman in a sleek black suit, hair pulled back in a tight bun. She belonged to no one in the room, and yet she felt crucial to everything happening. "Do you remember me, Jonathan?" The words froze him in place. "Who are you?" he stammered, a knot of confusion tightening in his throat. But before she could respond, chaos erupted again. A loud bang pierced the air, and a flash of light erupted near the entrance, followed by thick clouds of smoke. The crowd gasped in horror, quickly shifting back, creating space as panic washed over the room like a tide. "Run!" someone screamed, and the dance floor turned into a torrent of chaos. Jonathan felt himself pushed backward, eyes wide, as he tried to keep sight of Emily, who was swallowed up in the chaotic frenzy. The masked men hesitated, looking back at the smoke, uncertainty flickering across their faces. "Jonathan, over here!" Emily's voice cut through the chaos, pulling him like a lifeline. But where? The smoke thickened, sending a choking sensation into Jonathan's lungs. He stumbled forward into the chaos, hands brushing against bodies and fabric, until a hand gripped his shoulder, wrenching him around. It was Marcus, his face casting a shadow. "You need to know what she truly is." He pressed forward, breath ragged. "She's not just your girlfriend. She's a spy, sent to keep tabs on you." Shock froze Jonathan's thoughts again. "What? No. Yes. And that locket?" Marcus said, voice dripping with malice. "It's a tracker, Jonathan. She's been feeding information about you to them." The room plunged into chaos as realization crashed over him like a heavy wave. He turned quickly, eyes darting to Emily, searching for the truth in her eyes. But just as their gazes locked, another figure emerged from the smoke, the agent, standing strong and defiant. "Enough!" she shouted, voice ringing out like a bell. "All of you need to listen. Everyone has been misled." The room fell silent, bewildered expressions on countless faces. Everyone seemed frozen in time, waiting, wanting this terrifying storm to pass. "What do you mean?" Jonathan asked, hope colliding with confusion. The agent's gaze burned with intensity. "I have something that can change everything. For all of us." Before she could reveal more, the ground shook. An explosion erupted near the entrance, sending everyone reeling. The lights flickered and died, plunging the room into darkness. Jonathan's heart raced as he felt hands grasping all around him. The panic rising, emotions twisting. And there, amid the chaos and destruction, he felt the ground shift beneath him. Everything he thought he understood, spiraling into question. "Who can we trust?" His voice quivered, drowned out by the sound of panic. "And what is the truth?" The lingering chaos echoed as shadows danced, leaving Jonathan alone with only fear and uncertainty. What hidden truths awaited in that smoke? What if everything he had ever known was nothing but a facade? The chaos swirled around Jonathan like a storm, smoke thickening the air and panic rising with every heartbeat. He felt Emily's presence slip further away, lost amidst the tide of terrified faces. The masked figures were drawing closer, and a low rumble. He held the locket tight, heart racing, the weight of Marcus's words pounding in his mind. "Everyone has been misled," the agent repeated, her fierce gaze holding firm. But then the ground began to tremble, a low vibration that surged through the floor. Jonathan felt his heart stop. Was it an aftershock? Every head turned towards the entrance, where smoke billowed like an angry beast. The masked men hesitated, and Jonathan seized the moment, adrenaline boiling through his veins. "Emily!" he shouted, straining to find her. But then there was a flash. A blinding light erupted from the entrance. It was like a firework gone wrong, illuminating terrified faces. Then darkness swallowed them again. And that's when everything changed. A loud, echoing crash resonated as the entrance doors flew off their hinges, slamming to the ground. Jonathan's breath caught in his throat as a group of armed federal agents stormed in, their faces grim and determined. They paused, guns raised, scanning the room like predators zeroing in on their prey. "Everyone, get down," one agent barked, and chaos erupted again. The crowd instinctively dropped, screams filling the air as the agents moved like a wall through the mass of bodies. But amid the turmoil, Jonathan felt a sharp tug at his chest. There, standing in the doorway, was the last person he expected to see. It was his father. "Dad?" The word escaped his lips, disbelief paralyzing him. He hadn't seen the man in years, and yet here he was, eyes wild, like a storm was brewing inside. "Jonathan, we have to go." "Now!" his father shouted, waving him over urgently as he drew nearer. The spark of familiarity ignited confusion and anger within Jonathan. "What are you doing here?" he yelled, stepping forward. But then he caught sight of Emily, who was being pulled away by one of the masked men. "No, Emily! Stop! She's not safe!" his father shouted, finally breaking through the haze of his son's shock. "The locket! It's more than a tracker! It links you to something!" Something big. Jonathan's mind swirled as he struggled to comprehend. "What do you mean?" Then, without warning, another loud bang echoed through the chaos, blood-curdling cries rising as a smoke bomb detonated in the middle of the ballroom. The air thickened with confusion, and voices drowned in chaos. In the blink of an eye, the agents moved to protect Jonathan and his father, forming a protective barrier. But that protection sparked an unexpected power, one that snapped everything back into focus. The crowd's cries morphed as the agents fought back against the masked assailants, and Jonathan's heart raced. He needed to get to Emily. "Time to go, Jonathan," his father shouted over the chaos, grabbing his arm. "There's no time to explain." But Jonathan couldn't move. The gaze of the agent, the fierce one who claimed he was in danger, held steady. "He's right. You don't understand what's really at stake here." Then, from the depths of the chaos, a harrowing scream erupted, fracturing the air, sending a ripple of dread through Jonathan's heart. "Jonathan! Dad!" Jonathan turned back, eyes wide. It was Emily. Her voice sliced through him, pinching at his soul like a knife. In that moment, the world slipped from his grasp. He moved without thinking, tearing away from his father and towards the chaos as screams and gunfire erupted around him. But just as he reached the fray, a dark figure stepped in front of him. It was Marcus, his face twisted with rage. "Step aside!" Jonathan shouted, rage fueling his voice. But as Marcus opened his mouth, the world froze again. "You really don't want to see what happens next, brother." Jonathan's breath hitched. The ground shook again, a rumble that felt like the end of everything. And then it happened. A blinding flash, louder than anything, ripping across the room. Everything faded for a split second, the world going white. And in that fraction of a moment, Jonathan's life exploded. When the light receded and the dust settled, he found himself in a different place entirely, a dreamlike version of the ballroom, where nothing was as it seemed. Faces morphed in and out of focus. The chaos transformed into eerie silence. "Welcome, Jonathan," a voice whispered, a voice he recognized but could not place. "You're finally here." Everything hung on a precipice, reality itself twisting. Jonathan stood frozen, caught in a web of secrets that spun out into infinity. Who was the enemy? Who was the ally? And what had he truly become? Suspended in the strange silence, Jonathan struggled to comprehend what was happening to him. The faces shifted in and out like ghosts, looming memories wrapped in the mist. "Welcome, Jonathan," the voice whispered again, soothing and alarming all at once. It felt familiar, yet distant, the memories wrapped in a shroud of fog he couldn't navigate. His pulse raced, drowning out the world. Who are you?" he managed to choke out. The shadows flickered, and the fog deepened, swirling around him like an unseen hold. "You already know me," the voice replied, growing closer, each word dripping with an intimate familiarity that sent chills racing down his spine. "You've always known. Isn't it time you remembered the truth?" Before he could process the words, a bright flash ignited the darkness, illuminating everything, blinding him for a moment. He squinted through the glare, and then it hit him. A woman stood directly in front of him, features crystal clear against the chaos. "Mom?" Jonathan's voice trembled, disbelief clawing at his throat. But this wasn't the woman he barely remembered. This was someone different, someone alive. "Jonathan, it's time," she urged, her eyes wide with urgency and fear. "You have to listen to me." His mind raced. "But you disappeared. Why now?" She shook her head, strands of hair whipping around her face. "This place isn't what it seems. You've been protected, but your enemies are closer than you realize." "Enemies?" The world twisted and turned, panic climbing his throat like a vine, choking the words out. "What are you talking about?" And just like that, the ground trembled beneath their feet. That low rumble erupted into a deafening roar as the chaos around them swirled back into focus. The agents fought fiercely against the masked men, and screams echoed through the air, mingling with the shouts. "Your life, Jonathan? It's built on lies. You have to trust me." But before he could respond, another explosion rocked the room, sending a shockwave rippling through the crowd. Pillars of debris rained down amid the rising dust. In that moment, Jonathan's world fractured, panic ripping through him as he grasped the locket tightly. "Take it!" His mother's voice shattered his thoughts. "It's your only chance." And then, just as he reached to hand it to her, she disappeared in a burst of flame and smoke. Heart in his throat, he gaped. The ballroom swirled around him. He stumbled, fighting to stay grounded. The voice of the agent cut through the chaos. "Focus, Jonathan. You need to leave." But then, Marcus stepped forward, his face twisted with a malevolent smile, eyes glinting. "You think you can escape? What a foolish dream." Jonathan's chest tightened with dread. Why are you doing this? What do you know? The masked men began to pull back, forming a circle around Jonathan, their eyes dark and menacing. Everything, Marcus sneered, about your mother, about you. You're nothing but a pawn in someone else's game. Before Jonathan could fire back, the arena of chaos shifted again. As a spotlight erupted from the shadows, it ignited the dust, revealing silhouettes in black suits, powerful yet poised. "Enough!" a voice rang out. "This is over." There stood Amelia, not lost, not captured, but strong, her eyes filled with a fierce determination. The room held its breath, but then, as she stepped into the light, horror unfolded. She raised a trembling finger, pointing directly at Jonathan. "Jonathan Reid, you are not who you think you are." Time stopped. The audience gasped, a shockwave of disbelief rippling through the crowd. "What do you mean?" Jonathan croaked, but fear lurched within him, nudging at a hidden truth. "Your real name," she continued, voice rising, "is not Jonathan Reid. It's Alex Hart, the son of my parents' greatest rival." The room fell silent. Jonathan's heart plummeted. Faces turned, whispers ignited. Everything he thought he was unspooled before him. A lie. Every moment in his life, every struggle, all filtered through a name that wasn't his. "Who am I?" he gasped, as the shadows of his world closed in, thick and potent with betrayal. And as confusion wrapped around him like a shroud, despair leaked through his toes, creating a fracture he wasn't sure he could heal. What did it all mean? What would the people he loved think? In that chilling moment, Jonathan felt it all slipping away, a shocking truth that asked for more than he could bear. How deep did this deception go? And who was truly left standing in its wake? Jonathan's breath hitched as Emily's words hung in the air like a guillotine, ready to drop. "Not who I think I am?" It felt like the floor had vanished beneath him. The gasps echoed around him, each inhale of the crowd intertwining with his fear. He searched Emily's eyes for answers, but all he found was a reflection of his own dread. "Jonathan," she whispered, voice trembling, "you need to understand." But before she could say another word, the lights flickered violently, plunging the room into shadow. A surge of confusion ignited the crowd. The sudden shift sent a shocking wave of screams echoing against the walls. Jonathan's heart raced as he reached for Emily's hand, but she was yanked away, lost in the chaos. "Stop! Let her go!" His voice pierced through the noise, desperation filling every syllable. But the masked men tightened their grip on her. Then, as if summoned by his anxiety, a loud crash erupted from the corner of the ballroom. The air stilled for a heartbeat, thickening like molasses. Jonathan turned to see a massive segment of the wall give way, revealing a previously hidden tunnel. Dust swirled in columns, dancing excitedly in the air. From the darkness emerged figures, clad in black uniforms, their faces obscured by tactical gear. One stepped forward, voice deep and commanding. "Everyone, evacuate now." Wild-eyed, Jonathan met Marcus's gaze. "What is happening?" he demanded. "They're here for you," Marcus shouted over the chaos, his voice filled with something that felt almost like concern. "You can't trust anyone in this room." "Enough, Marcus," Jonathan spat as uncertainty surged like blood in his veins. He needed to stay focused. He looked back to Emily. "I'll find you," but the sight of her was swallowed by the turmoil. Then everything exploded. A flash of dazzling light momentarily blinded him. Shockwaves rippled through the crowd, throwing bodies in every direction. Jonathan stumbled backward, fingers fumbling for any solid hold. When the light receded, confusion reigned. The same figures now had their weapons drawn, scanning the ballroom as if hunting for prey. Jonathan's heart sank as he finally caught a glimpse of what was behind the black masks. Emily's anguished scream echoed again, and Jonathan spun around to the source. But it wasn't only her crying that froze him. The staggering truth sent ice through his veins. On the floor lay a bloody figure, face obscured, but the familiarity of the stance pierced through his shock. "No, no, no," he breathed, shoving his way through the chaos. As he reached them, the masked agent lifted their head, and Jonathan's stomach dropped. It was his father, blood seeping from a wound on his forehead, eyes glassy and unseeing. "Dad!" Jonathan croaked, kneeling beside him, pulse racing. In that moment, everything shifted again. A loud beeping erupted around them, and Jonathan realized the danger was escalating. The noise intensified, rising into an unbearable crescendo. "It's a bomb! Get down!" an agent shouted. "What?" Jonathan's eyes widened, but before he could fully process, the air filled with a high-pitched whistle. As if time froze, Jonathan's mind churned with all he had just learned. The truth, the lies, the tangled web he was caught in. The sound grew louder. He glanced at Emily, tears streaming down her cheeks as she faced the masked men. Then the world vibrated with a deafening boom, a blinding flash ripping through the air. A swirling shockwave pushed Jonathan backward, everything blurring into chaos. He shielded his eyes, watching as vivid memories flickered. Children laughing, his mother's face, until they shattered like glass. When the dust settled, silence hung as thick as smoke. Jonathan struggled to rise, terror clawing at his throat. Only then did he hear a voice, soft, eerie, cutting through the void. "Jonathan, welcome to your real life." And at the edge of the remnants, an impossible figure stepped into view, eyes wide and knowing. A version of "What? Who are you?" he gasped. But before answers could form, the world around them dimmed, and everything he thought he knew began to unravel in spectacular fashion. Jonathan's heart raced as the unsettling truth washed over him. This figure, this version of him, stood there with eyes wide, a mirror reflecting his deepest confusion. "What does this mean?" he shouted, but no one seemed to hear. The chaos resumed around him, but he could only focus on the figure who looked like him, yet felt like a stranger. Suddenly, the air grew thick. A surge of energy rippled through the room. The shadowy figure stepped closer, a smirk curling at the corners of his mouth. "You really don't understand, do you? This isn't just about who you are. It's about who you're meant to become." Jonathan felt a chill creep down his spine. "What are you talking about?" The words caught in his throat, fear wrapping tightly around him. "Everything you thought was true is a facade. You're not just Jonathan Reid. You're part of something larger, a family legacy, a power struggle. You're the key to an empire." Before Jonathan could respond, the ground shuddered again. The agents and masked men froze, their expressions shifting from chaos to shock. In a heartbeat, the ballroom doors slammed shut, locking them inside a storm of confusion. Then came a blinding flash. Jonathan stumbled back, shielding his eyes. When the light faded, a new figure stood at the center of the room, bold and unyielding. It was a woman dressed in a sharp black suit, her demeanor confident and fierce. "Enough!" she called out, her voice slicing through the tension. "I'm here to settle this once and for all." The crowd murmured, eyes darting between the new arrival and the chaos still reigning around them. Jonathan squinted, trying to discern her purpose. "Who are you?" he demanded. With a flick of her wrist, she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, piercing gaze locked onto him. "I'm your mother's sister, your aunt, and I'm the only one who can help you understand what's happening." Gasps exploded around the room. Jonathan felt the floor drop beneath him. But I thought." "You thought your mother vanished, didn't you?" she continued, stepping closer. "The truth is far more complicated." Just as Jonathan opened his mouth to speak, the figure of his doppelganger suddenly lunged forward, seeming to hover above the ground. "No, she lies. You don't know her." Jonathan staggered back. "What's going on?" Beneath the discord, the floor quaked again, sending vibrations through his legs. "You were designed to lead, Jonathan, to take control of our family's empire. But they hid you. From everyone, even from yourself. No, I won't be part of that," Jonathan shouted, panic tightening his chest. But as he blurted it out, a strange pull tugged at his heart. A part of him, long buried, flared alive. With an eerie calm, the woman continued. "Your father wanted to protect you, but in doing so, he chained you to this facade. You are not just a millionaire. You're the next heir, capable of uniting the factions." In shock, Jonathan glanced around the room. The masked men shifted. The agents looked confused. This exposed layer of reality twisted everything. He felt like a marionette, trying to control its own strings. "And what do you want from me?" Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, casting jagged shadows. A deafening crash shook the room as the windows shattered, air spilling in like a whirlwind. Jonathan shielded his eyes. The moment of truth arrived. The figure that looked like him pointed a finger, voice echoing, "You'll see. Everything changes now." Then, the explosive fragments of the room fell silent. The atmosphere blanketed everything in heavy uncertainty. "Run!" his aunt yelled, voice strained, but it hung in the air like a whisper on the wind. Yet Jonathan stood frozen, an inexplicable fear coiling tight around him. Everything he thought he knew was unraveling. Who was his family? Who was he? As he turned to find Emily, the shadows deepened. Was she safe? And then, from the chaos, a heart-stopping revelation thundered in his mind. With every fiber of his being, he sensed something bigger looming on the horizon, a storm threatening to swallow them all whole. What had he been swept into? This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was the beginning, a chapter that could expose everything. "Jonathan!" someone cried out, and he realized fate was preparing to strike again. But what would be left standing when the dust settled? The dust was still settling when Jonathan felt the air shift. His heart raced as he faced the chaos around him. Emily was still in danger. He could feel it like a tight band around his chest. "We have to go," his aunt urged, her voice breaking through his haze of fear. Jonathan nodded, urgency flooding his veins. He turned to the masked figures, agents and enemies alike, harnessing every ounce of determination. "You're not taking her!" he shouted, his voice rising above the cacophony. The masked man holding Emily tightened his grip. "You think you can save her?" he laughed, cruel and mocking. Jonathan's heart thudded painfully. "Let her go!" But before he could move, the masked figure froze as another blast of light illuminated the ballroom. The agents took advantage of the moment. "Cover!" shouted one of the federal agents, weapons ready, eyes focused. Chaos erupted again, the world erupting around them like a storm. "Run, Jonathan!" his aunt urged, her voice cutting through, and he swept toward the exit, hoping with everything inside him he could reach Emily. Suddenly, Jonathan felt a surge of power from the locket, still clutched in his hand. Visions of his past moments with Emily flooded his mind. The laughter, the quiet talks at home, but most importantly, he remembered love. With that spark igniting in his heart, he charged forward. "Emily!" he called again. She twisted in her captor's grip, eyes wide. "Jonathan! Help!" she screamed. He reached them, hand outstretched, eyes locked on hers. And then it happened. The masked man faltered, drawn in by the power of the locket as it glowed brightly. "You're nothing but a pawn." The assailant spat, but even with the words, uncertainty flashed in his eyes as Jonathan pushed forward. With a burst of energy, he pulled Emily free. They stood together, fighting as the dust cleared, pushing against the murky chaos. The masked figures had lost their edge. "Keep moving," his aunt called, guiding them toward the still closed door at the end of the ballroom. Jonathan nodded, grasping Emily's hand tight, feeling the warmth of companionship against fear. Together, they tore through the remaining crowd, dodging debris falling from above. Each step surged with adrenaline, the very essence of purpose. But even amidst this freedom, doubt crept in. What's next? He wondered, searching every face in the crowd for hints of truth. Would they ever escape the shadows? Would they uncover the legacy? Just as they burst through the door, panic still simmering outside, Emily turned to him. "What does this mean for us?" Her voice trembled, uncertainty reeking in the open air. Jonathan searched her eyes, feeling the vulnerability swirl between them. "It means we fight to discover the truth together. No more hiding." With a rush of hope pushing against the weight of their past, they stepped outside into the night's embrace. The stars blinked brightly, illuminating their path ahead. They could sense the storm brewing, the danger lingering. But within that spark, a flicker of courage ignited. "Together," he whispered, squeezing her hand. She nodded, faith twinkling in her eyes, and in that moment, they knew they had each other. The darkness wouldn't consume them. They would unveil the truth behind it all. But as they stood there, heartbeats synchronizing, Jonathan felt an unsettling sensation. A shadow flickered behind the stars, a presence still lingering, waiting for the moment to strike again. Was it the end, or just the beginning? Stay tuned, and before you go, you must subscribe now to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Click that like button now to help the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and thoughts about the ending. It matters. And share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to know how it all turns out. Don't wait another second to show your support. We want you in this amazing community.